Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah, and today I will be teaching you how to do some basic knife cuts. Properly holding your knife is really important. You want to grip the knife with your thumb and pointer finger on either side of the blade, not with your finger on top, as that can cause damage to your hand in the long term. For the baton cut, you want to make it 2 inches in length and half an inch in width. So to start, you cut your vegetable into 2-inch pieces, and then you're going to square off. Squaring off is pretty much exactly as it sounds. You're going to take your round vegetable and cut off the sides to make it into a square shape. Now at this point you need to check that each side is even. If you find any sides that aren't even, just trim off what you need to. And then you're going to cut down the middle and then cut down the middle again of those 2 pieces. And that should get you those 2 inches by half an inch pieces. Now you can whip out your ruler and see how well you did. My cuts aren't perfect. I'm a little bit longer than 2 inches and a little short of half an inch, but practice really makes perfect with these precise cuts. The process for making the baton cut is pretty much the same for all kinds of vegetables. However, the main difference is simply the size of the vegetables. As you can see, we start off by making the 2-inch sizes that we need for the cuts, and then we square off the exact same way that we did with the carrot. Double check that everything is even, and now here is where things are different. Because of the size of the zucchini, you don't just cut it in half, you cut it into thirds, and then again those slices get cut into thirds as well. Now that it's all cut, you can take your ruler and check how you did. I did a little under 2 inches this time, and a perfect half inch. So like I said, this really is all about practicing. Now once again, the process is the exact same. Cut your 2-inch sizes. In the case of this sweet potato, that is directly down the middle, and then you square off the sides. Double check that everything is even, and then like the zucchini, you're going to cut it into thirds and then cut those pieces into thirds as well. And once again, bring out your ruler, and as you can see, I made a perfect 2-inch cut, but not a perfect half inch. So again, practice makes perfect with these. Now that you have all these vegetables prepped, I'm going to show you how you can use them in a meal. First, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And then in a small container, you're going to combine some cornstarch, garlic powder, black pepper, and salt. Once that's all stirred up, you can set it to the side and then bring out a larger bowl and pour all those baton cuts you just made into it. Now bring out some olive oil and coat those vegetables in it, making sure you stir everything together just so that each baton cut gets covered in oil. Now you pretty much do the same thing with the cornstarch mixture you made. Pour it over the vegetables and then stir to make sure that the cornstarch is covering every single vegetable. Once that's all done, you can do the final step of getting a baking sheet out, making sure it is greased, that's very important, and then pouring the baton cuts over the baking sheet and spreading it out just to make sure that everything cooks evenly. Once that's ready, you can put it in the oven until the carrots are soft. While the veggies are cooking, we're going to heat some oil over medium-high heat. And once that's hot, you're going to add some salmon skin side down. Once the oil is bubbling, you're going to press down on the salmon to try and make sure that the skin doesn't stick. And then it's in the oven until the salmon reaches an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the salmon is done, you can transfer that onto a plate, and as you can see, I did not do a good job of preventing the salmon skin from sticking. The best way to do that is to make sure the oil is really hot when you put the salmon on the pan. And now that the veggies are done, you can plate up however you desire. And now you have a delicious meal using the baton cut. The salmon is perfectly cooked, it is nice and juicy, and the veggies are soft and delicious with that amazing cornstarch mixture. Before we get started on the batonette cut, I'm going to remind you how to hold your knife. Grip both sides of the blade with your thumb and index finger, and do not put your index finger on top. Now the batonette cut is a 2-inch length and a 1/4 inch width. And because the length is the same, the beginning process for all of the cuts in this video is the exact same. Cut your vegetable into 2-inch pieces, and then square off those pieces just like you did with the baton. After you make sure every side is even, this is where things start to get different. You're going to take that piece and cut it into thirds instead of halves like you did before, and then cut those pieces into thirds as well. You should aim for about a 1/4 inch in width. Once again, take out that ruler and measure. It should be 2 inches, which I did, and a 1/4 inch, which I almost got. Now, a vegetable like celery is going to be a little bit different just because it's shaped more like a curve. You pretty much start the same. You take your celery and cut it into 2-inch pieces. Now, because celery is curved, you're going to cut along that curve instead of trying to square anything off. So simply take your celery, cut along the curve. You can kind of rotate the vegetable while you're doing it if that makes it easier. And then for measuring, you're going for 2 inches and a 1/4 inch, but because it's curved, it's going to be a little bit more of a triangle shape, which is perfectly fine. And back to the carrot, you're going to do the exact same process you did at the baton. Again, 2-inch cuts, and then square it off. Make sure all these sides are even, and then because of the size of this, I'm just going to cut it in half instead of thirds like I did with the first vegetable, and then cut it in half again. The amount of times you cut your initial squared off shape really depends on the size of that shape. So for example, this one that I'm squaring off right now, I'm going to cut it into half instead of thirds like I did with the first vegetable, simply because this one is about 1/2 inch thick, and I'm looking for a 1/4 inch for this specific batonette cut. And when we measure, we can see that it's a little under 2 inches and a perfect 1/4 inch. Now this vegetable is a parsnip, and it's basically a funky carrot. It's really wide at the top and really narrow at the end. You start the same by cutting 2-inch pieces, and then each piece is going to yield a different amount simply because of how it goes from really wide to really narrow. Of course, you square everything off and then double check to make sure all the sides are even. Now I did do something a little weird with this one. I cut it in half and then cut those halves into thirds, but one of those halves wasn't exactly half, so I had to cut them into halves again. How many times can I say halves? Anyway, at the end you should have all of your batonette cuts that should measure 2 inches by a 1/4 inch. This piece that I'm measuring is a little thicker than a 1/4 inch, but that is perfectly fine. Practice making perfect is the goal here. For this dish, you're going to take a little container and add some Greek yogurt to it, followed by a good amount of lemon juice. After that, you can add some chopped up dill. I did mine pretty fine. And then you can finish it with some garlic powder. Mix it all together, and that's pretty much all you need to do for this recipe. It's very simple. Set it off to the side, and then you can start on plating, which is the really big thing with this. We're making a crudité plate, which is basically a veggie platter. So transfer your sauce, your dipping sauce, into a cute little bowl, and then take out a big plate. Put the dipping sauce right in the middle, and then you're going to put all of your beautiful batonette cuts around that sauce bowl. Now this dish is simple, but it is the perfect thing to bring out at parties. The dipping sauce is absolutely delicious. It is dilly and garlicky. It is just an absolute delight to have at any table. Now, as a last little reminder on how to hold your knife, you're going to grip the blade with your thumb and index finger and do not put your pointer finger on top. Now, like all of the cuts in this video, the Julienne starts the same way by cutting your vegetable into 2-inch pieces. With this celery, because it's curved, it's going to be a little different. We're not squaring anything off, we're just cutting along the curve into really fine pieces. We're going for a 1/8 thickness, really, really skinny. Now you can take out your ruler and it should be 2 inches in length, which I managed to do, and a 1/8 width. And with the celery, it's going to be a little triangle shape, so it's not perfect. And once again, we're starting with a zucchini. We're going to cut it into 2-inch pieces. It is the same for every single vegetable here. It is 2 inches in length. We square everything off and we make sure all the sides are even. Now, because we're trying to cut this into 1/8 of an inch, we're going to slice this shape into a bunch of tiny little slices. Then we're going to take those slices and stack them, and then we're going to cut them again into 1/8 size sticks, which of course ends up with your Julienne. A nickname of the Julienne is the matchstick cut, which is really the goal you're going for. You're trying to make a matchstick shape. Now, you're going for 2 inches. I very much failed the mark here, and a 1/8 inch width. To finish off the Juliennes, we're going to go back to our handy dandy carrot. We're going to cut 2-inch length pieces, and then we're going to square everything off just like we did for this entire video. It is the most consistent part of these cuts, is you square everything off and check that everything's even. Then just like the zucchini, you're going to make really thin slices that are about a 1/8 inch size, and then stack and make the same width cuts again. Now let's measure everything. The Julienne should be 2 inches in length, which I almost got, and then a 1/8 inch width, which I did get. Remember that with these precise cuts, practice really does make perfect. Now for the recipe, we're going to make a stir fry. So with the sauce, you're going to add a good amount of soy sauce into a container. Then add some sesame oil, some rice wine vinegar, some maple syrup, garlic powder, and finish it off with some red chili flakes. Mix that all up and then set it to the side. Now you're going to heat some olive oil over medium-high heat and then add all those beautiful Juliennes that you just made. Season it with some salt, and then saute everything until the veggies are soft. Now at this point I added some rice noodles. You can use whatever noodles you want, and then you add the sauce as well. Stir everything together just so it's nicely incorporated, and cook it until the sauce becomes a little thicker. This dish is the perfect thing to make when you're a little short on time. The sauce is absolutely delicious, a little salty, a little spicy, and the vegetables have the perfect little bite to them. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope you learned something new, and if you want, you can like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you next week.